Big business during the Gilded Age. Before the Gilded Age, economic growth came to a halt because of the Depression of 1873. The Depression led to the bankruptcy of many banks and railroads and resulted in hundreds of thousands of people out of work. The Liberal Republican Party also emerged as a result of the Depression. Liberal Republicans were strong advocates for laissez-faire capitalism, where there is no government regulation in businesses or the economy. With this ideology, Liberal Republicans believed that it would help stimulate economic growth and create more jobs. While Liberal Republicans were unsuccessful in getting into office, they helped push the Democratic Party, who were able to get control of the House in 1874, to shift their agenda to supporting laissez-faire capitalism. By 1879, the Depression of 1873 had ended and the Gilded Age began, along with the Second Industrial Revolution. Laissez-faire capitalism became the dominating force of the Industrial Revolution that began during the Gilded Age. The idea that laissez-faire capitalism could help bring prosperity to the common man was pushed by writer Horatio Alger, who published books that assured young readers that if they were honest, hardworking, and had a good character, they could leave poverty behind and succeed in the new competitive economy brought by the Second Industrial Revolution. This idea was also reinforced through the success of industrialists like John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and Cornelius Vanderbilt, who all came from humble backgrounds. Laissez-faire capitalism was also embraced through social Darwinism, a concept created by Herbert Spencer. Social Darwinism used the idea of natural selection theorized by Charles Darwin and applied it to human society. Spencer believed that human society and the economy advanced through ruthless competition and the survival of the fittest, both of which occurred with zero government interference. The survival of the fittest idea was evident during the Second Industrial Revolution. This idea was basically saying that businesses had to use many different strategies in order to rise to the top. This includes interlocking directorate, a business practice where a board of directors serves on the board of multiple competing companies. Businesses also had pools. A pool occurred when a firm agreed to divide an area amongst themselves and share in the profits. Vertical integration was also one of the many strategies used. Vertical integration is a model in which a company controls all aspects of production, from raw materials to finished goods. John D. Rockefeller, a prominent entrepreneur in the oil industry, practiced this when he took a big stake in the oil fields, added pipelines, and developed a vast distribution network in order to control production and sales, all the way from the oil well to the kerosene lamp. Rockefeller was also the pioneer of horizontal integration, where he would drive competitors to the brink of failure through predatory pricing, then invite them to merge their local companies into his large corporation. In 1882, Rockefeller's lawyers created a new legal form, the trust. Under a trust agreement, stockholders in individual corporations transferred their stocks to a small group of trustees in exchange for shares in the trust. Trustees might literally only own a few companies, but could exercise effective control over many. These strategies practiced by Rockefeller and many other entrepreneurs during the Gilded Age allowed the development of near monopolies. A monopoly is the exclusive ownership and control of a single industry or trade. Entrepreneurs used ruthless business practices to wipe out their competition and earn large profits, and overworked wage earners and paid them very little, widening the gap between the rich and the poor. Entrepreneurs did whatever they could to gain economic prosperity, which led to the question of whether these big business leaders were robber barons or if they were in fact captains of industry. During the Gilded Age, many business tycoons were viewed as robber barons. Robber barons were American businessmen who used unethical and dishonest business practices to develop near-industrial monopolies and become extremely wealthy. An example of this is Andrew Carnegie, a leading entrepreneur in the steel industry. Carnegie was known for using vertical integration, where he controlled all aspects of production. He made it so that no outside company had anything to do with the production of steel. He also paid his workers extremely low wages, while he had an estimated net worth of $310 billion by the time of his death. John D. Rockefeller also used ruthless business tactics in the oil industry, and his trust had a near monopoly in all U.S. oil, which he had gained with a merciless reputation and animosity. Rockefeller engaged in unethical practices with his business, Standard Oil Company, such as predatory pricing and colluding with railroads to eliminate his competitors. George Rice detailed his experience of horizontal integration brought on by Rockefeller in the newspaper New York World in 1898. "I am but one of many victims of Rockefeller's colossal combination," said Mr. George Rice, "and my story is not essentially different from the rest. I established what was known as the Ohio Oil Works. I found to my surprise at first, though I afterward understood it perfectly, that the Standard Oil Company was offering the same quality of oil at much lower prices than I could do, from 1 to 3 cents a gallon less than I could possibly sell it for. J. Pierpont Morgan was an influential financier and banker who used interlocking directorate, where he was a board of director for different companies, to control many businesses in the same industry. He financed and organized many railroads, U.S. Steel Corporation, and General Electric. He formed the U.S. Steel Corporation by combining Carnegie's corporation with others. J.P. Morgan closed off competition by keeping steel prices low and by working men 12 hours a day for wages that barely kept their families alive. Cornelius Vanderbilt was an industrialist who worked in railroads and shipping. He revolutionized railroad operation and increased efficiency. Throughout his entire career, he practiced aggressive marketing, shrewd deals, and undercut his competition. While these robber barons used some unethical business practices that were eventually outlawed by the U.S. government, they left a tremendous legacy behind with their work in philanthropy. Many of these entrepreneurs donated millions of their profits to charities or the education system. In 1889, Andrew Carnegie wrote an essay called The Gospel of Wealth, where he urged the new upper class to use their wealth in order to address the increasing wage gap. In his essay, he wrote, "Surplus wealth is a sacred trust, which its possessor is bound to administer in his lifetime for the good of the community." Carnegie gave over $350 million for philanthropy. John D. Rockefeller listened to Carnegie's persuasive essay and turned to philanthropy after 1897. Rockefeller donated more than $500 million to various educational, religious, and scientific causes. Cornelius Vanderbilt donated $1 million to create Vanderbilt University. The Gilded Age was a time of tremendous economic and industrial growth that occurred because of ruthless business practices that were allowed by the government. With laissez-faire capitalism incorporated into the government, the economy was dominated by big businesses who swept out every other competitor they had. While some people see the industrialists of the Gilded Age as captains of industry who used their skills and intelligence to get ahead, these businessmen lost sight of their values and used unethical business methods to become the richest men in the country. Even with their contributions to charities and education, these men essentially created the gap between the rich and the poor and were able to manipulate the economy to help only themselves.